Okay, these three techniques that you ought to know, these are orchestration techniques. And what that means is that these are specific things we can do with the instrument to change the sound. And I'm specifically talking about strings here. I should make a whole other class just on orchestration. It's a fascinating topic. It's about all the different colors you can get out of an orchestra. And by colors, we mean different sounds. We tend to call those colors. There's three that get used a lot in attention cue that I want to draw your attention to. So for this, I'm going to uncharacteristically put myself on camera because I want to show you how these work. So I'm going to use a violin as example. All three of these techniques work just as well on any of our stringed instruments, meaning the violin, viola, cello, or bass. The first one is called Ponticello. Now this is our kind of fancy musical term for, you can kind of think of it as adding a little bit of distortion, acoustic distortion. What it means is that normally when we play a violin, we play right in between the end of the bridge, or end of the neck and the bridge, the end of the fretboard and the bridge, right there. That's where we want to play. If you play closer to the bridge, so this is the bridge, if we play really close to that, that is Ponticello. So this is not Ponticello, and this is Ponticello. It gets a little grittier, a little more distortion. So it's soft up here, normal, and Ponticello. You get more overtones in it, it's a little gnarlier. That's what we're doing. Let's look for an example of that. Let's see what this is. No, that's probably Ponticello a little bit. That's a little Ponticello. Let's try this one. That's Ponticello. That's a couple different instruments doing it, but it gets a grittier sound. So if you're working with a real orchestra and you want this kind of really tense, gritty sound, you would ask for Ponticello, or if you want to go crazy, ask for molto Ponticello, meaning like as much as you can give me. Like that, like bowing right on the bridge. Molto Ponticello. Here we're just asking for Ponticello, and really I'm not asking for anything. I'm using a sample that has Ponticello in it. But that's what that's called. Thing number two, tremolo. Tremolo is exactly what it sounds like. Right? It just means rocking back and forth. It's great for tension cues. In reality, if you're working with a real orchestra, one thing you have to keep in mind with tremolo is that you can't ask them to do it forever. There's a limit to how long a human being can do tremolo. It's quite taxing on your right arm. So these are things you have to think about when you're working with a real orchestra that you don't have to think about when you're working with samples or even a sampled orchestra, a MIDI instrument. But normally this there's only so long you can do that. It's like a workout to your right arm, but you know, like it can be done for like a minute at a time. But even like a minute at a time, that's pretty taxing. So that would be tremolo. And then the last thing that I'm using a lot in this cue is gliss. So a gliss you can do on many instruments, but not all, is just just slowly moving the pitch. Now, a gliss gives us an interesting situation because what happens in a gliss, particularly a slow gliss, is that we are inherently creating a ton of dissonance because we're playing a lot of notes that are in between the notes that we know, right? We're not playing just C and glissing up to C sharp. We're spending some time in between those two notes. That's going to make dissonance. Let's hear this track, this sample. Okay, so that's a fast tremolo and gliss. Here is just a gliss, I think. Okay, so that's a gliss on a harmonic. Here's another one. So that's a gliss up, and what we're hearing in there is all kinds of notes in between the notes. So if you have two people doing a slow gliss, you're going to get tons of dissonance because there's all of these notes in between, and they're not going to be perfectly in sync. So it's a great way to create a ridiculous amount of dissonance really fast. So those three techniques are incredibly good orchestration techniques for creating tension cues. They're also useful other places, don't get me wrong. But especially in tension cues, you can do all three of those at the same time if you want. You could mark something Ponticello, Tremelo, and have them do a gliss. They can all be done at the same time, and I think there's a lot of that in here, stuff like this. That's a Ponticello gliss tremolo right there on a double bass. So it can create some great tension. Now let's focus in on a little bit more on this dissonance and what I'm talking about there.